Okay. All right, looks like we're about ready. My name is Jerry Gill. Today is December 10, 2008. I'm visiting with Pat and Kathy Dorr on the OSU campus, Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. I appreciate you guys being with us today. I'm going to start, Kathy, with a couple questions to you, but Pat, jump in here if you've got a comment too, okay? Kathy, first of all, a little bit of quick background. Where did you grow up?
I grew up all over the place.
Okay.
Because my father was part of the oil business, but chiefly Oklahoma City and then the Midland, Odessa oil area and Hobbs, New Mexico.
Well, how did you get to Oklahoma State University from there?
Well, we came back my senior year to Oklahoma City, and from there, my parents were OU grads, and I broke ranks and came up here to OSU. So yeah, and saw the light.
So what high school did you graduate
Northwest
from?
Classen.
Northwest Classen?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it the Comets? Northwest Classen?
Yes, we were Comets.
Silkies.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Well, so I understand you worked as administrative assistant under Dr. Wilton Anderson.
After Pat and I got married, I got a job.
Which was our senior year.
Yeah, we got married in the middle of our senior year at OSU here. And after I graduated in spring of '69, I took a job working in the student union as an administrative assistant. My degree was in office management, which served me well to do that. But I was never very happy in that position. And I somehow or other, Dr. Anderson probably heard of my discomfort or my desire to do something else. And I had been a student of his and a fan of his and enjoyed him. And so he called me up and said he'd like to take me to coffee. And I was scared to death. I really didn't know exactly the nature of this interview or this visit, but I was happy to have coffee with him one morning. And he said at that point in time, they had 4 corner offices in the College of Business for the 4 department heads. They had been teamed up 2 and 2 in only 2 offices and shared a secretary, but they were moving them to the individual offices. And so his secretary had decided to stay with business education. And so he left him with a void. And he came to me and said, I'd like you to be my secretary. And I was floored and honored and was very anxious to go do that.
When he says it, you do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he makes you, he showed so much faith in you and belief in you, and you just felt buoyed up by that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so you'd had your connection, you said a couple of accounting courses?
Yes, I had accounting 1 and 2, and he had tried to interest me in going on. And at that point in time, I just thought I could be the best secretary that the world had ever seen, and that was my area, and that's what I stayed with.
She was the first certified professional secretary in Oklahoma.
Dr. Anderson arranged for me to take the test, paid for me to take the test, believed I could pass it, and I did, and he was proud of me in doing that. So.
Well, a little bit of, going back to your interview, what do some of your anxiety you had, what do you remember about the interview that you had?
Oh, gosh. Well, he's just such a strong personality and knows what he's, this is what's going to happen and this is the order it's going to happen. And he just floored me in his saying that you are the one I want. I know you can do the job. You graduated top in your class at OSU and I need a secretary and you're the one I want to have. And so I was very thrilled to be able to take that.
He still calls her the best secretary he ever had. He called you that yesterday.
Yeah, he did. Yes.
So he didn't take no for an answer.
No, he didn't take no for an answer, and that was not an option. Never regretted that decision. That was a wonderful opportunity for me.
So what years did
I worked for him in the fall of '69 through the summer of '71. When Pat graduated with his master's and we had to move on.
So I've got to ask
that would have been longer than that. We stayed around to work in internal audit. We did not leave.
Okay, so 72. So that
69 through 72.
72. Okay.
Spring 72.
So got to ask, what was he like to work with?
Oh, he was wonderful to work with. Now he could be kind of intimidating because he would come in and you knew you were going to do this, and this, and you were going to do it quickly and you were going to do it right. But he also empowered you with the way that because he allowed me to take on more and more responsibility as he saw that I could do it. And he turned lots of things over to me. He would dictate letters, and I would make slight corrections and things, and he would notice that, but he always approved of it. Or if I didn't do it just right, he would tell me, but he even would say, write a letter and say so-and-so, and just give me a brief description, and then allow me to do that kind of thing, as he knew that I could and was able to. And I had the files on the master students in my office, and I'd pull them out and talk to some of them at times, saying, have you taken this or this? That's what he's going to ask you about, or that sort of thing. So he was...
You're sort of the setup for him.
Yeah, he was very... very good about empowering the people that he knew could take over and do things for him.
Could you follow up on that a little bit? What are some of the responsibilities that evolved in your role?
Well, like I said, actually talking to the master students or students that came in wanting to talk about that kind of thing. When he had people coming in to interview, I would sometimes, make those kinds of arrangements. They're going to stay here and there, or they're going to, set up meals or that kind of thing. He'd say, it seems like he said one time that we needed new better filing records, and Pat and I moved some stuff around one weekend and refiled and did some things, and he just allowed
and I
me
can
to do
say
that.
it from the other side, because I was a master's student and worked with the PhD students, and if you needed information about the School of Accounting, you went to Kathy, and everybody knew that. So she was the information disseminator for the department too. I mean, Andy was the boss, but if you needed the information, like every good secretary or administrative assistant, that's who you go to for the information. Absolutely. She was well known for that.
Well, you've already alluded to this a little bit, but could you expand a little bit on his management style, how he interacted with people? I understand he's a pretty strong personality.
Yes, he's a strong personality, and he usually knew the way he wanted things to go. And, you came in and you sat in the hot seat in front of his desk and talked to him. But, he rewarded good service and good, he believed in his superstars, as he called the people that he knew were doing well, or that sort of thing. And he called me and his wife sometimes his snappy little numbers, because we were doing the things he wanted to quickly, and he appreciated that. Back then it was largely the men that were in accounting. It was still breaking ground to have women in accounting. There weren't a whole lot of them in there. And so, those politically correct designations that people say today probably didn't apply then, because we could call a woman a snappy number, and that wasn't a bad thing. But he was very good to you as long as he knew you were trying and doing what he wanted to see happen and making the goals of the department move forward.
But you hit part of his personality. He had his superstars, and that's the term he used. He called you superstars. And so others would say he played favorites, and he did. I mean, those he determined were his superstars, he kind of took care of.
What do you remember most about Andy? What stands out in your mind the 3 years that you worked with him?
Oh, gosh. Lots of things. I remember he was always in charge, doing what needed to be done, and taking over and telling you what needed to be done, and you did it. And I remember that one time, and I don't remember if it was a Christmas or what, but we wanted to get him something. And I determined that the perfect gift were cufflinks that said debit and credit, so you could wear them on the right arm. And that's the only surprise I think I was ever able to do for him. He loved that gift, and he wore them. And
I would like to have some.
Yeah, he even noted that in class when he was up writing on the board, that I know my debit.
Credit, the left cufflink, debit was right.
That would be debit.
On the left and credit on the right. Yes, that'd be the correct. So yes, but he was just very generous, and it was fun to be able to do something fun for him. Great. That to reciprocate.
Well, what personal qualities about Andy impressed you the most?
Well, his knowledge and his he didn't come from a lot of wealth or a huge metropolitan. But I mean, he started in Cherokee, Oklahoma, and came up, and he knew the value of hard
got his
work.
degree at Northwestern Oklahoma. I mean, we would not think that was significant from today's
Then
standards.
did his then graduate work at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, yes. Or no, he did his graduate Colorado. He got his PhD at Colorado.
Okay, did everything?
I don't think he did any
Work here until they
education
came.
at OSU, yeah.
Okay.
And then came here in
But he knew-
60.
He knew the value of hard work. He knew he didn't just think that your best people came from the major schools. He knew they could come from the other areas and smaller areas, and he just he wasn't a man of a lot of words. He didn't sit and just chit chat. You didn't just tell him how you were feeling today, or or how the dog did, or anything like that. He didn't care about that. He was all business. But he was not ever uncaring or unfeeling towards you or that sort of thing. He took care of you if you were his, and I was definitely his, and I appreciated that
You
care
sort
and
of,
concern.
Kathy, your story kind of leads me to the next question. Could you tell some stories about Andy that would help us, or say those that didn't know him personally, know more about him? Can you think of some stories in your particularly your office story settings,
Oh,
your
gosh.
reactions with him, interactions with him?
I was trying to think of
We should
specific
have been
things.
taught. I got something to tell when I.
Yeah. Okay. It was just. It was such a contrast. I had Milton Ushery in one office, and who was the head of the actually the master's program of students, and Dr. Anderson was in the other office. Milton Ushery never had anything on his desk. It used to be a game I'd play to put something on his desk that I would finish and see how quickly it would come off of there. But Dr. Anderson had his piles, and he knew exactly what was in the piles, but he had them. And so, I had to very carefully place things in the right piles and keep them and that sort of thing. He came by, and he every day and always had nice words for me, talked to me. I remember going in and dropping my steno notebook in the middle of one of the dictation, and he never missed a beat. It was up to me to get it back and get going and that sort of thing. I remember being very scared the first time I ever had to take dictation from him, and he was very patient with me, and he got where he really snapped them out. But he worked with me to make sure that we could become a team to work together, and I appreciated that.
When you go to remember stories, it's harder because he, as we said, he did not BS.
Mm-hmm.
You did not talk about the football game. You did not talk about things that were unrelated to the department and to accounting.
Mm-hmm.
That was him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did not BS about any other stuff. Can you bet you don't have one memory of that, because I don't.
No, I really don't.
And
That's
how focused the man was on
So
his
you
job.
suggested some of this, but did he have some I don't want to say quirks, sometimes there were some pet peeves and things. What are some things you remember about him? The stacks on the desk is one of them, but other
Well,
superstars. and
Well,
some
or
other
somebody that
ones,
wasn't on time, that would not be
Ooh,
that would not be something that he would have appreciated at all. I don't remember any particular quirks, as you would say. I mean, he didn't have to have a certain brand. He did like one particular kind of what those coffee nips. He loved those. And so that was, there were just very few little things like that that I could say that he really preferred, And I think I learned that through Gwen, not so much through him. But
did you see him? I've heard he was really, as Pat was describing and you're describing, a really good recruiter
oh my
of
gosh,
students or faculty.
I'll tell you more about that.
Yeah.
too.
Do you remember some story? Some recruiting stories?
When he and I were, when I was a student of his, and we were in this great big classroom over in engineering, and it was one of those big auditorium rooms, and there were 2 aisles and 3 seats, and it was so funny. He picked out the top students, and he'd stop them after class, and he'd take them to coffee and talk to them. But there was this one couple in class, and the way he sat us alphabetically, and so one of them ended up on one aisle, and the other one was across the aisle on the end seat. And he asked one of them a question. And that, I think it was the guy, and he asked his wife for the book, and he reached across the aisle and got the book. And he said, "Why don't you have your own book?" he was just, I can't believe you couldn't make less. And he finally said, we're married. And, that made a big difference. And then the whole, thing was very different. And I think he took both of them to coffee at one point in time. But, boy, when he pointed at you, you better have your answers.
And you talk about him being the recruiter. He was not a recruiter for accounting. He was the recruiter. He taught principles. See, if you looked around, the principles courses were normally taught by maybe even PhD programs. Rookie, lower people. He taught the principles.
Not intermediate, you're talking about beginning principles.
Beginning, the first two courses.
Yeah.
And he even did, like I had the first two courses by correspondence. He even handled the correspondence. Why? Because he could identify up front who the best students were, and he went after them. Mm-hmm. He was a recruiter deluxe. The American Accounting Association gave him the first Outstanding Accounting Educator Award in 1973, and they called him an accounting evangelist. And that captures accounting evangelist.
Term. Great.
That was his demeanor. He evangelized about accounting.
Very good.
Lanny Chastain told me also that he had, to be sure that he got all of them, his classes in the early years were large.
Oh, yes.
He had
yes.
100, 200.
He wanted to see everyone.
So he was teaching everybody.
Student. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And then those
and he'd start at one side of the board, and by the end of class, there were 3 huge boards up there, and they would all be full. Yeah, that's the way he taught.
What about Pat? What about his teaching style that you remember? Is it class?
My first paper. I started engineering major for a year and a half, and then moved into political science because I decided to change gears and go to law school. Mm. And so I was a political science major when I started dating this lady who had Wilton T. Anderson at the time. And that's when somehow, while I dated her, she introduced me to Wilton like that. And he said, well, if you're going to law school, you need to major in accounting. Mm-hmm. So he talked me into majoring in accounting. And I forgot what the original question was. His style is...
Yeah, no, you're talking about your first
my first
assignment.
See, So I was end of 2 years, and I wanted to graduate on time, and I was just now entering the School of Business, college business. So I had to take several courses by correspondence over the summer. I took both accounting courses by correspondence in one summer without sitting in a classroom. Well, I got my first paper back. Wilton T. Anderson did all the correspondence for principals as well as in-class work. My first paper, big O F.
You've never seen so much red on
I have saved that paper, Jerry. And he says, if you're going to be an accountant, you can't do that. And I'll tell you, I saved that. And make a long story short, I made an A after that. But that's how he was. He was direct. So his style was, he did not beat around the bush. He came right out and told you what he thought, which I'll tell you. So I saw that as a student. Because then you talk about the recruiting. I'm a classic example of Andy the recruiter. And of course, we called Wilton T. Anderson was called Andy. Not by students, but by professors and his friends. But so he got me to change my majors. Then I was going to go to law school, right? Well, somehow he talked me into getting a master's in accounting. I still wanted to go to law school. Somehow then he determined that I needed to get a PhD in accounting. And this was his style too. It wasn't just, he recruited at all levels. He would find his best master's students and he would say, you are going to get a doctorate. Then he would actually determine where they were going to get a doctorate, set it up for them and send them there. So he set up an assistantship for me at Michigan State to get my PhD.
We were married at the time.
And I finally said, no, I want some experience. I'm one of the first people I know to ever say no to Wilton T. Anderson because he had sent Mike Crouch there. So these are people you might talk to later. George Krull there. Several went to, Bill Kinney is another person. And I'll tell a story later about Bill Kinney because that's kind of interesting too. So I did not go on and get the PhD then. I went into practice. But then he contacts me in practice and says there's a position open in Ada, Oklahoma. They want a teacher. So he talked me into going down there to see if I would like education. Then got me back to get a doctorate. I went to North Texas and then hired me back here. The man determined every step of my career. Is that a recruiter or what?
And I'd heard that was sort of a standard thing for him that he see, one person described to me as he farmed students out.
That's right.
You
And
do
to
your
get
undergrad,
them
your
back.
master's, and like I said, then he'd find a place for your PhD, and then bring you the ones he wanted. Then he'd bring them back onto the faculty.
And he
'Cause-
farmed them out to places where he knew they'd
Yeah.
get the education that he would want.
Well, at Michigan
Yeah,
State
yeah.
was one of his favorite places because the guy received the second outstanding accounting educator. What was his name? Oh, anyway. But he selected his best master students, selected where to go, sent them away for a PhD, but then hired him back. Me, like I said, George Krull, Mike Crouch, Bill Kinney. The trouble is, I got a few more stories. Some of them stuck and some of them didn't. As I'll tell you, Bill Kinney is a great story. But I'll let you go on and pop in whenever.
Well, so part of the understanding was that someone explained to me that it's sometimes hard to get people from, say, East Coast, West Coast, to come to Stillwater.
That's right.
But Stillwater, Oklahoma people would come back.
Yeah,
to Stillwater.
and he knew they would
It's a
be
great
loyal.
strategy.
And he knew they would be loyal to
Mhm.
OSU,
Mhm.
and he knew they would stay, so he wouldn't have to fight this turnover. And it worked. I mean, he basically came here in 1960. We had no reputation, in my knowledge, of an accounting program. He is the father of our accounting program. It existed beforehand, but he really built it into
Put it
what
on
it
the map.
was. And he started our PhD program in about 1969, right when my senior year. We didn't have a PhD program. We were not a comprehensive university in accounting at that point in time. So he begun that too. He built the School of Accounting.
Pat, let me back up just a little bit and get some of your early career. I forgot to ask you.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Oklahoma City. Went to high school in northeast Oklahoma City, right by Lincoln Park and Zoo and Spring Lake Amusement Park. I was 6 blocks from there, and great place to grow up. Of course, like I said, my great uncle played baseball here in 1914 and 15. My parents went here. My 2 uncles went here. My 2 older brothers went here. My wife went here. My 2 children went here. And if I live long enough, I hope to see my grandchildren. So we were steeped in A&M, and I was brought to my first A&M football game when I was 2 years old.
Oh, so
Unfortunately,
you didn't have a choice or a chance. It was already predetermined.
Well, my dad would, like many parents of OSU, he said you can go anywhere you want to, but I'll pay for it if you go to OSU.
Great incentive. Great.
So I literally grew up with orange blood, literally.
So you did a tracing kind of our conversation earlier. So you went to. So after you left, you did your master's degree here.
I got my
in
master's,
Stillwater.
went to KPMG, which is Pete Marwick back
Okay.
then, a CPA firm in Tulsa. Worked for them a couple of years. Then went and tried teaching in Ada, Oklahoma, East Central University. Liked it, so I went back to get my doctorate at University of North Texas.
Okay.
And I had been an auditor in practice, but when I went back to school, I kind of specialized in taxation. So, which is significant because when I came back here, I was the only auditing professor. That's why Andy hired me back. George Krull had left, and he was the only auditing professor, so he hired me. And for a couple of years, I was the only professor in auditing, but I also taught estate and gift taxation. Very unusual in our field to do both.
Two different.
But Andy, he went after me. When that auditing position opened up, he looked around at where his people were, and he found me and said, and he just tells you, Jerry, I should never have left. I did not even have a dissertation topic yet. I just completed my coursework. I wasn't even completed. Hadn't taken my foreign language exams. I didn't have a dissertation topic yet. And he says, I need you and I need you now. No sane person, and you know this, would leave their PhD program, not only ABD, but not having started their dissertation. And yet I did. So that that's a story of the power of his will to convince you that you need to do this. Of course, I wanted to come to my alma mater.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was under great pressure those first 2 years because I was teaching full time and working on my dissertation.
Did you
That
have
was
kids
a
at
strain.
that time?
And becoming
Yes,
a father for the second
Had a
time.
little girl
yeah.
and then had another one during my PhD, but I survived.
But just give us a sense of what was Andy's, what was his spiel? What was it because you had to come to Oklahoma State? What was so compelling?
He was so super positive. The man had energy. To use words to describe him, he was evangelistic. He was high energy. He really didn't give you much of a chance to respond. He dominated the conversation. And he must have been good at salesman. I mean, there's good salesmen and bad salesmen, because he virtually always got the result he wanted. He was a salesman.
He had that yellow tablet, and he would sit down and write, "This is what I will give you," and he would write it down and hand it to you. This, you will get this much, and I'll do this for you, and I'll do this for you.
He made up his mind that he had you before he got you, and therefore there was no alternative.
He was just explaining how it was going to happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
He confessed. I can't even explain how I made some of my decisions.
So I can see you leave the interview and you said, you called Kathy, Kathy, you can't believe this.
I think probably said that more than once in our career. I mean, so I joined the faculty here in 1977, coming back, and that was interesting. Like I say, I was under a lot of stress. 3 people started the same year as I did. A guy named Don Hanson, who is our current department head, Larry Hammer, who has retired, and myself. They had completed their PhD, so they were not under the pressure, the gun, like I was. And so I stayed in that first year and a half, 2 years, I was in the computer center until 3 in the morning. I mean, I had barely had a life.
I was very, very pregnant. My worst nightmare was that I would go into labor in the middle of the night, and there's no way to get him at the computer center. And if he was in the middle of a ride,
that was the old days, Jerry, when you had to run cards through the computer. You had to key punch every instruction into a card.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And so, I mean,
Also, he gave us a salary when we came here. And he was taking a little bit of a risk because Pat was ABD and didn't have his topic and all this. And he told us, okay, when you finish, you get this bump up. And so, he held that over his head. I mean, he had ways to make you do what he wanted to do. Yeah.
To get a faculty member now, you have to give them everything. You got to give them the world, including no work in the summer, total research, extra money to research. I had nothing. He held money back from me to give me the incentive
to make sure that he would finish. Yeah.
That's another thing, just an illustration of his will. I remember coming in to interview with the faculty, and trust me, we would not even begin to consider today hiring a person at my stage that I was at. It would be that it would not happen, but it did happen. And when I interviewed the faculty there, I could tell some of them were saying,
"What is going on?
What's going on? We shouldn't be doing this." But
a lot of them
it happened, and I'll tell you why. And this leads to another story, because Andy said we are going to hire Pat Dorr. I came on faculty in the second year I was here, maybe even the end of the first year. We had a faculty meeting. This is one of my favorite stories. And it tells you both sides of Wilton T. Andy. We were having a discussion for our faculty meetings. Andy sat at the end of the table, and he basically told you what was going to happen. But we had 3 new professors. And Don Hanson is pretty outspoken too, and I've always let people know how I feel, even in my position. And we got into discussing an issue, and at one point I said, well, let's vote on it. And I remember looking at Chestine, who I had known from earlier, my master's program, because he came in '69, and this look of horror on Chestine's face. We voted on it and voted down Andy's recommendation. Afterwards, Milton Ushry told me that was the first time the faculty had ever voted on anything. Do you believe that? The first time. So I kind of have a special place in the Andy history.
Pat, what were the repercussions on that? I mean,
no. That's here's the good side too. Andy, as successful as he was at ramming home things, he began to moderate. I think in his own view, this is my personal opinion. See, that was '77, and Andy left as head of the department. I should have looked up
or somewhere, I think.
82, 83. Yeah, right in there. I think he felt like he was less successful from that point. But he did, to show you that he didn't try to dominate after that. He was still Andy. You weren't going to change that. But we did begin to vote on things and more of a democracy in the department. Now, I've often thought that from Andy's point of view, he probably considered that weakness. Now, we did not, and which ties into another story. To tell you both sides of Andy, and I mean nobody can respect Andy more than we do. But I was a senior in 1969 in accounting, and I had to go on a field trip with Bill Kinney. You probably know. Do you know Bill Kinney?
Just not
He's
well.
Stillwater boy. Grew up here.
No of him.
Oh, I mean, he is the top auditing researcher in accounting academia. Number one from here. He is a fantastic guy. He was just back here presenting the paper last month. But Bill Kinney had just been hired as a new young professor in 68, 69, right in there. And I'm going on a field trip, me and about 3 other students in the car, and Bill Kinney all the way over is just ripping Andy right in front of us. And he's really ripping his style, and that and we're sitting there, like, what's going on? I mean,
How do you react
how
to
do we,
that?
no
Yeah.
kidding. And Bill Kinney left after 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Michigan, he's been at the University of Texas, and I mean, he is respected like few people are in our profession. He could not abide by Andy's style. Andy, dictated. Like I say, they didn't even vote. Well, Bill Kinney was a very independent, very intelligent person, and not everybody has been able to accept Andy's style. It would have been difficult for me, honestly, if he had not moderated some, after 77. But our department has continued to grow and be successful, and that's because of what he laid down. He laid down the foundation. But he had both those sides. He could irritate people with his aggressiveness, and yet overall it built us. I mean, how can you say? I mean, we owe everything to Wilton T. Anderson.
Pat, sort of turning the coin a little bit, external relations, did he maintain close relationships with accounting firms, with OSU practitioners in the field?
Absolutely.
Could you speak to that a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think one of the strengths of OSU, and he built on that, was that we produced, our main charge was to produce graduates going into public accounting and industry. I mean, we started the PhD program in 69, but I don't think Andy ever viewed that as our main charge or what we should accomplish. And so since we're producing students to go into the industry, he felt the need to have those industry contacts. And I mean, he knew everybody. I mean, he would go to a conference, and that's another thing about people that are successful in marketing, and that's what he did. He marketed us. He knew everybody, could remember everybody's name. And many of us don't have that strength.
Well, I think also, too, he expected those firms to support the department, too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he kind of farmed out better people to the firms that were helping us a little bit more. And he rewarded them for their support to the department, too.
Kathy, let me pursue that just a little bit. You probably saw the, what we say, outsourcing the placement of our students. So you say one of the things that Andy would do was he good students, he would talk to them about where he wanted them to go, which firms and where.
He would kind of direct people.
Do some of that.
Or if they went to several interviews, he might call them in and say, "How did that go?" And
But
tell you the advantages of one over the other.
I remember him absolutely saying, "I now that you bring that up, you need to go to Arthur Anderson." I mean, he would tell people that. We try to avoid that now because the firms get a little touchy about that. But I mean, he would determine that you belong to this firm, and he would tell you, and you probably went there.
Pat, was there 2 reasons for that? Because I'm thinking one is hearing your conversation that he specifically wanted to strategically place OSU graduates.
Yeah.
The other, I heard a story, I think from Lanny was telling me, that he was very good at sitting down with a student or the faculty member too, and talking to them about their professional strengths and
absolutely.
And, what career path would probably work for them.
I don't think he was doing it all for himself or the department. I think
he was just very good at analyzing.
He was doing it for you. I think all he did for me, he believed he was helping me every step of the way. Oh yeah, so I don't think it was ever.
But he had this ability to. Did you perceive that he did that to analyze people and understand their strengths and weaknesses and where they might best fit?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think he had a real good grip on that.
And I'm an example again. I think he read me well. I've been successful here, and he had to ram me through. There were people that wanted to. I could tell they did not want me.
Well, and
I have proved Andy read me right. I'm kind of one living evidence that he over the will of the others read me correctly.
And he knew Pat would finish and would be successful.
That's
and
right.
not everybody would have taken
And that's probably what maybe it was Lanny or someone else, I've had some conversations with telling me that he he seemed to sense or know. He could analyze the ability, the success factors that a person had, and would, like I said, would choose those superstars.
That's true,
and support them.
And the other way around too. If he didn't think you have it, he didn't give you the time of day. I mean, I think every successful person, highly successful, is probably like that.
Like head coaching in football or basketball.
Yeah,
And he could take some people too that might not have seemed like leaders or movers or shakers. And he could make you believe in yourself too. I think he saw some things in some people that maybe they didn't even sense
you into
themselves.
majoring in accounting.
No, he didn't.
Is one failure.
What do you feel were you alluded to some of these, and it's sort of the question made both of you. What do you feel Andy's major contributions to to developing OSU's programs were? I mean, would you summarize some of these?
Basically selling us, marketing us nationwide.
He put us on the map nationally. Yeah.
Honestly, we still go around and around about this, Jerry. A lot of Public Accounting Reports is a magazine put out by the industry, public accounting industry, and they do a survey of the firms and academicians, and they rate schools. Well, a lot of that is, we know, I mean, some substance, some marketing. Well, Andy, we had some substance, but he was building our substance. But he knew what we were going to be and how good we could be, but he went out and sold us as better than we were before we were that good. And look, he was named the first outstanding accounting educator. Andy academically was not strong. He did not have a strong research background. He did not have a strong publication record. He was not, if you rated him as an academician on that side, he was not strong. But man, he was unparalleled in marketing us, in going across the nation and bragging on his superstars and telling how good we were. Now, and I say he wasn't strong research-wise. He wrote a principles book. He had principles book. We used it in principles. And that was a successful book. So, I mean, from a teaching point of view, he was extremely strong. From a research point of view, he was not. And yet he would go out and sell our research side, even though he wasn't a big researcher himself. So he was the marketer. We joked sometimes about he oversold us, and that he really convinced people we were even better than we were, which was probably a lot of truth to that. But that's how powerful. So it wasn't just his charisma and his personality here. Yeah, I mean, it was nationwide because people believed what he said. So we climbed into the top 10 of accounting programs in the nation under Wilton T. Anderson. Now, we're still somewhere in the top 25, but we haven't been top 10 since Andy left. And a lot of that is Andy's personality and the ability to market our name.
One thing that's interesting to pick up on when I was recruiting for OSU, that I picked up on a statistic that OSU graduates from a school of accounting had, I think in the Southwest, and includes Texas and about 5 or 6 states in this area, had the highest or second highest rate of percentage of passing the CPA exam first time around.
Yeah,
and I remember that said something that they were learning the principles of accounting as well. Too.
Well, I mean, my class, I remember 15 people in my master's class, and 13 of us passed it the first time. Wow. So we were one measure of that success.
And that's not, I mean, like usually less than half of them passed the first time.
Back then it was 15% passed the first time, and 13 out of 15 in my master's class passed it.
So, I mean, while he was selling the school, it was pretty good. It had to be fairly good, too.
No, we were in getting better, but Andy didn't wait for us to get better. He sold us even ahead of time. And that's descriptive of Andy's personality.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he wouldn't.
What was some of Andy? So, obviously, he had good relationships with our alumni and practitioners. What are some, do you remember some activities, some ways he stayed connected to our graduates program?
You mean after he left?
No, when he was still teaching, but graduates as they left. Did he bring people back to the campus? Did he have organization? I mean, did he stay in contact with these graduates?
We always, I'll tell you, and I'm kind of a part of this history. We always had a good Beta Alpha Psi chapter. Beta Alpha Psi has always been one of our key, and Beta Alpha Psi is the professional honorary accounting fraternity. And that has always, we have programs presented by the firms every other week. and actually 2 programs each time. So we have 2 firms in every other week. And that was one of our main contacts. And Andy was a big believer in beta off-site. And so he supported that. And that was one mechanism for, so it wasn't just occasionally these firms came in, it was every other week. And I came back in 77, helped strengthen and kind of, beta off-site had, I won't say the name, but under one advisor, it kind of really drifted off the map. I looked up some old Redskins, and they weren't even in the Redskin in 76, 77, in that era. And they were on probation nationally. So when I came back and completed my dissertation, or I was completing it, Andy and I got together, and I remember talking about we needed to strengthen beta off-site. He knew it. He knew that was part of our pipeline to practice, to the practitioners. And so I got involved in beta off-site, totally reorganized how they go about doing things. I helped Andy start our first School of Accounting honors banquet, which we've done ever since, which is another contact, because we'll have 200 to 300 practitioners back for that banquet. And so we strengthened beta off-site, and it's for 3 out of the last 4 years, it's been named the top organization on campus. That's 420 organizations. So Andy was a believer. So he built that beta off-site, which is a prominent part of our
I
program.
remember he always had that banner in his office.
Oh yeah, the beta off-site.
Well, that Hall of Fame, Accounting Hall of Fame, did that start under Andy's tenure?
Well, yeah, it did. That's what I'm saying. When I was involved in that, starting that banquet, and that's when we started honoring what we called then the Distinguished Accounting Alumnus. In the first year was just one person. In the second year, one person. Then I remember talking to Andy, and Lanny, Andy, and I were always kind of involved in that because we came from OSU. Oh, I came from OSU, so I went back actually further than Chastine did because I was an undergraduate here, and my brothers had been here, and we decided, man, honoring one a year, we're never going to get everybody honored. So then we started honoring like one from industry, one from public accounting, one from education. Well, somewhere along the line we ran out of educators. So then I switched over to one from industry, one from public accounting, large national public accounting, and one from local practice public accounting. So that's continued on, but that started under Andy in about 1977, the year I came, or year after I came. And so we now, when you say the Wilton T. Anderson Accounting Hall of Fame, we just renamed that 3 years ago. We decided to we used to do the Distinguished Accounting Alumni with honoring our students, and the program just got too long. So 3 years ago, we separated that, and we call it the Wilton T. Anderson Accounting Hall of Fame Banquet. And that's where we recognize them. And that also appropriately recognizes Andy as the founder of this program, and who else should a Hall of Fame be named after? In fact, one thing, here I'm retiring in May, and the one thing that still bothers me, our department should be called, many schools of accounting are named. Well, you know what naming requires. It usually requires bucks. Our school should be the Wilton T. Anderson School of Accounting. And if we think of it like that, but officially it's not. And if I had a $5 million, it would be, but I don't know what it takes to name it.
Pat, when you retire, that might be a good fundraising opportunity for you.
Well, I'm serious.
Seriously, get some people together. And,
you say that. I mean, I may seriously do something like that. And because it should be. I mean, I can't even conceive of somebody coming along and giving us $5 million, $10 million, and naming the School of Accounting after someone else. That would not be appropriate.
Well, also, as you alluded to, Kathy, earlier, he really created a lot of scholarship money, didn't he?
Oh my gosh, yes.
To cover all scholarships.
And there's been a lot of jealousy. Honestly, in this college business, my entire career here and before me, because he raised the money, we had more scholarship money than all the other departments combined. We still do.
Well, one of my stories, I didn't in here, but when I was in the recruiting years ago at the university, and I think I shared this off camera earlier, but I got to know him because there'd be some outstanding students at high schools that visited with the Anderson Accounting, so I called the department. So he visited me one time, and he said, Jerry, he said, if you got someone, he said, if they're really interested in accounting, he said, if they've got a 20 or higher ACT score, he said, you offer them a scholarship right on the spot.
Really? Oh, yeah.
He was pretty aggressive
And
with
see,
scholarship money.
that shows you his management style, too.
Mhm.
Man,
No.
he identifies you as superstar.
And that
Man.
was, I guess, and that was very atypical because you bundled and packaged all your scholarship deal. You waited till the spring to make your offers. He said, "No, it's in the fall their senior year, and they got a 28 or higher, and there's a guy you offer a scholarship right there."
Yeah.
Well, and that's why back when we were professors, if we found a good person that did not have a scholarship or wasn't even in accounting yet, all we had to do was walk into Wilton's office and say, "Andy, I have found a great student. They don't have a scholarship. They're thinking about majoring." Bam. He had a scholarship when I walked out of that office. Lanny Chastain, to his credit, who grew up under that management style, same thing. And when I would find somebody, I'd walk into Lanny's office, Lanny succeeded Andy as department chair, and same thing, because he grew up watching Andy do this. It's not that easy anymore.
So kind of sort of getting close to a wrap here, what are some favorite memories that you guys have of Andy? I mean, your stories, memories, kind of favorite.
Well, my favorite memory is just that he loved us.
Yeah,
I mean, he had such an impact on both of us, and we're almost like his children, and he treats us almost like that. When he talks about us, he's. I mean, if Andy gets sentimental, which he's not a really highly sentimental, but it kind of gets sentimental when he talks about us and some of his people, and so we still see him.
We're closer to him than his own son, probably
yeah.
at this point in time. Yeah.
And so it's just fond memories of his influence on our lives. I mean, it's incredible. Of course, my daughter majored in accounting, and in 1996 was our outstanding accounting graduate. So, I mean, you could say his influence has continued through my family into my daughter. Sad he won't be around to influence my grandchildren.
What?
One of my favorite stories, current stories. Did you hear how he met his current wife?
I don't know.
This is his second wife. Yes, this is kind of reflective of his management style. His first wife, Gwen, died of Alzheimer's, and he took care of her and made sure that he kept her at home as long as he could, and then took care of her through a home in Oklahoma City, and very much she was cared for her, and they loved each other dearly. But after she'd been gone for a while, one of his neighbors said, "Andy, you just can't sit at home. You need somebody in your life." And he looked around and determined from different groups he was in that there was this young lady, and lady close to his age,
young lady,
that he thought he might enjoy spending some time with. And so he said he gave himself a week in order to contact her. And at the end of the week, her name was Jackie Adair, and she was also a widow. And he waited till the end of the week, and it was 4:00 one day that day, and he said, "I need to go." He went over, knocked on her door, and said, "I'd like to take you to dinner."
I will be.
And he took her to dinner, and they ended up married.
I will. Dinner's never your day up here.
I mean, just like he managed everything
just like he managed everything
and this
else.
is probably, how old would he have been by then? 80s?
It must have been 80 or so.
80s?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Surely must have
because
been.
he's 92 now.
And they've only been married, what?
I don't know. We're talking about a guy in mid-80s.
Yeah.
Going out and doing
and courting. And it was just it's such a neat story. And they've been so good for each other.
He was probably very organized.
Yes, he was. Yes. And the way he determined who he might want to spend time with. And
that's what he said way back when. He presented you something, you did it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, she said, "All right."
It's sort of like we've already decided. We're just knowing how to do it. We're going to do it.
That is to the end.
Well, Pat, let me give you an opportunity for a final question here. Not so much about Wilton Anderson. This is about Pat, Professor Dr. Patrick Dorr. You're going to be retiring in a year. Some of your favorite OSU memories through the years. What stands out to you? But Kathy, obviously, but besides
Gary,
Kathy,
I don't know if there's so many. One of my favorite memories, just remembering my students. I mean, I have students that are some of the top partners in the big accounting firms. The managing partner of KPMG in Houston, the managing partner of Deloitte in Denver, Colorado. I mean, and that's one of my joys, and knowing that I had some influence on them. And, a measure of that which stunned me was, when they hear about my retirement over the summer, they launched a professorship in my name and raised $420,000 in 18 days from these people.
It's exciting.
That's
It'll make you really
overwhelming.
proud.
Is that a memory?
We were in London at the time, and he was just hearing about this through emails, and
I was
his
emailing
eyes were
back,
just,
get serious.
Couldn't believe it happened.
But
It's
the
wonderful.
point of it is that is a measure of my favorite thing is just the great students I've had. And Andy, loyalty, that's what I love about OSU and staying here. Of course, I was an undergraduate here, but Jerry, we had almost no turnover and very little turnover compared to other schools in professors. And that's because the atmosphere at OSU was so positive. Everybody still feels that. It's incredible. And so just being at my alma mater has been fun. My kids had no desire. That tells you another thing. No desire to go anywhere else. It was just assumed they would go here. But other memories, I don't know.
2 son-in-laws from OSU too. So.
Yeah,
I know about one of them.
Yeah.
The Beta Alpha Psi. Andy got me into Beta Alpha Psi, which I have done the last 15 years. I did it at the beginning of my career. Then middle career, I worked on my research and all. And then the last 15 years, I've come back into kind of student orientation. Well, Andy got me into that, and Beta Alpha Psi has all these incredible memories for me. He helped get me into somewhere along the line, the Summer in London program, or influenced me to look at that. And we love teaching in London. There's just so many memories here. I walk around campus. It's just I'd have to think about detailed ones, but my students, and I want to have a reunion party when I retire in May, Beta Alpha Psi reunion. Try to get as many of my former Beta Alpha Psi officers and members back.
How many years, Pat, have you been advisor to the organization?
If we add up my first years, it's probably been about 17, 18. I even lose track. By far longer than anybody else. And then I started another club, TCB, Taking Care of Business. We were doing nothing, college business. You may know this, being in high school recruiting. You don't really get into business. You get a little bit your sophomore year, but you really don't get into it till your junior year. Mm-hmm. So you come as a freshman, you take no business courses. So we were watching people change their mind about their major because they had no contact with business. Mm-hmm. I saw that and started a club to go after freshmen expressing an interest in business. It's called Taking Care of Business. So I did that for about 6 years, and it rolled on I started that in 92. But anyway, between that and Beta Alpha Psi, I've probably been an advisor for a club probably 24, 25 years out of my 33 here. And most faculty don't do that. There's been pros and cons to that. It's cost me on the research side, but led to pure enjoyment on the student side. So, and Andy's the one that got me involved in Beta Alpha Psi. So all this goes back to him too. But that's my fondest memory, probably Beta Alpha Psi. But I couldn't go. We stayed long enough. I'd talk all day.
Right. Kathy, any favorite memory you have, and share, expand on that?
Oh gosh, I remember walking across the campus. Oh gosh, I can't even name the exact day. Cold day, and Pat hands me a piece of bubble gum. Says, "You want some gum?" I'm going, "Gum." I pull out the bubble gum and it's got an engagement ring on it.
And then the bubble gum. That was the dumbest thing. I bet no one's ever done anything that.
Of course, I'm not sure that anyone's ever. No, that is creative, Pat.
And then I remember.
There must have been something about gum between. I don't know. I can't even. She remembers these details better.
Then I remember working on house decorations one night for his fraternity, and somebody handing me a bucket of black paint that poured all over me. And Pat and I going to the University Health Center to get it out of my eyes and everything. And while they're doing that, Pat has my engagement ring over at the sink, cleaning my engagement ring to make sure, that this investment that he has.
Sound like an accounting guy to me. So you know the value of that ring.
That was a good $350 ring.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the image. The doctors are working on Kathy, because you're over here working. Don't care about Kathy. I'm working on the ring over here, right?
I'll tell you, but OSU's been wonderful
it's been
to
a
us,
wonderful
as
experience.
for you. I mean,
Yeah.
you're another one that can understand what we believe because we're steeped
And
in
then
OSU.
seeing our kids.
I remember
here, too,
Terry
is
Gill,
wonderful.
football player.
You go back a long,
I
long
know,
way.
that's what
You
I'm
just
saying.
overrun
I
yourself
remember
there.
that. I told you, I've been an OSU fan
But
since
most
I was
people
2
don't.
years old.
Yeah. But I said when I played with Walt Garrison, oh yeah,
Uh,
everybody remembers Walt.
That was,
Gosh, it
and you beat OU.
Yeah.
back
Twice.
junior and senior year.
That's right.
But anyway, this is about you guys.
Yeah.
But anything, you know, I know you, Kathy, got to move on here pretty quickly. But anything we've not talked about, or we've forgotten about, or you'd want to share, kind of
We'll
at the
probably
end?
remember
Oh,
something
I
later.
know, I'm sure we
but,
will. A whole bunch of things. But no, you've given us lots of chances.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You bet.